Yeah, so just started recording. So let's just get going. So hi, I'm Murli Ravi, and this is Vispi Davar on the other side. We're both former venture capitalists, and for those who don't know us, we used to be with two large funds, and we've recently started.
The former venture capitalist.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So delete it. Yeah.
That's
We're both VCs actively investing. Don't go into Sierra and Jafco. So we're both
okay.
VC actively investing, and right now we've started this blog called Ask Your VC, and then the tagline Southeast Asia.
Okay. Hi, my name is Murli, and this is
And I'm just
sorry. Do it again.
yeah, do it again. Actually, you say hi. Hi, I'm Murli Ravi, and I'll say I'm Vispi Davar, and then you take over again.
Okay. Hi, I'm Murli Ravi,
And I'm Vispi Davar.
and this is Ask Your VC. The two of us are venture capitalists based out of Silicon Valley and Southeast Asia, and we've covered India, Southeast Asia, and the US for the past several years. And we decided to come together to launch this podcast series. So this is the first of our series. I hope you will enjoy all the rest of them. So for the very first one, our topic that we've actually been talking about in quite some detail with a lot of people has been this recent spate of large M&A deals in the tech space. So, Vispi, sitting in the Bay Area, you've seen this sort of happen in your backyard, right? This isn't new. It's happened many times before, but the latest is the deals are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, I'd just like you to maybe take a moment to talk to us about the three big deals that we are discussing today.
Great. So the three big M&A deals that we're discussing all occurred over the last couple of months. First is, of course, Google Nest for 3.2 billion, Facebook Oculus for 2 billion, and then the stunning Facebook WhatsApp for 19 billion. And these values, of course, some of them have a stock component, which is really relevant. So the values, of course, eventual values might change. So there's three real key parameters around these three large deals that I wanted to talk about. The first is the values and what's driven them. So a significant component for two of these deals is stock, and Facebook stock in particular. As you've seen, Facebook stock has had a great run. When these deals were announced, they were at a 52-week high. And of course, from a corporate development, financial management standpoint, to be able to take advantage of your stock to do large deals during that time is, of course, a great strategy. So Facebook, of course, has known Oculus and WhatsApp for a while, courted them for a while, and then the time was right to strike a deal with a significant stock component. So that's the first parameter. The second one, which is what's driving each of these, and I'll put all three of them in two buckets. The first bucket would be platform plays, and that's where Nest and Oculus clearly fall. Fred Wilson did a great post on this saying these are the bets on the next platform. So if you look at large platforms, obviously mobile being one, iOS and Android being the leaders, the internet being another, certainly wearable PCs, monitoring compute in your home, which is what Nest was, these are all the next potential platforms. And one can argue that these potential platforms, coupled with really smart founders who can build products around it, are great acquisitions for the next platform. And clearly, both Facebook and Google do not want to miss out on the next platform. You could argue Facebook missed out on being a platform play on mobile, which it's not, and Google was late to the party, certainly on mobile. So those would be platform plays. It's unclear how they would pan out. There are certainly many pessimists who would talk about wearable computing over 10 plus years ago and nothing's been seen from it. But there's certainly clearly enough new technologies there to warrant these acquisitions for platforms. And then the last point I'll make, Murli, is when deals are this high in value in general, and certainly no multiples can justify them, you're certain that they were competitive in nature. So whatever the value of these deals were, you can be almost assured that there was another competitive offer at, let's say, 20% below. That could be from other buyers or from private placement, or large private equity rounds, etc. Message to sort of any entrepreneur, which is, of course, have multiple horses as potential M&A partners when you're going through that process.
So that's very interesting. A few other trends occur to me, and I'd like your views on those. If I just flip back in a few years ago and look at the prior set of the big acquisitive tech companies coming out of the valley, One of the biggest, obviously, was Cisco, right? And they made a whole bunch of acquisitions, whether it be WebEx, whether it be the video conferencing company Tandberg out of, I think it was Denmark. And then you've got, guys like the Flip Camera, you know. So obviously, and Linksys, obviously. Out of these four names that I mentioned, I think one is already sort of non-existent, which was Flip. It was a big deal and a big team and so on. But I think Jonathan left soon after he joined the Cisco team, and he's gone and done other things. But the other three still sort of exist in some form or fashion. And for many of these acquisitions, I think the rationale was pretty much what you said. We've got to build a platform. But in addition, we also, I think, were somewhat, I think the hope was to be a bit more careful, not only pin your hope on the next platform, but also to say that, look, I'm going to drive my existing product revenue, because the more Flip cameras there are out there, the more likely I am to sell big routers and other networking equipment to the big providers. So do you see that this is essentially history repeating itself, or is it more, is it something specifically new about this right now?
Yeah, Cisco is a really great case study. And there were two sort of strategies with the acquisitions you mentioned. So one was largely around them wanting to be in software. They were in, of course, giants and leaders in networking, slower industry growth. They wanted to get into software, enterprise software in particular. And they started with WebEx, which is mid-market and upward focused video conferencing software. They did a few acquisitions around it that was smaller. And then the second foray was trying to get into the consumer. And Pure Digital, which is the Flip camera, and Linksys, of course, fall under there. And now, many years later, certainly the report card isn't a good one for either of those forays. And the report card for the fourth, or rather for networking alone, has been pretty good for them. So they haven't succeeded. Let's talk about the reasons potentially why they haven't. In software, a few things went against them. First, WebEx is largely a mid-market play. I think the average selling price would be somewhere in the $10,000 to $20,000 annual recurring revenue range. That's a small selling price, inside sales. Of course, they're focused on the large as well, but most of the business is sort of in the mid-market. Cisco's sales team, of course, are high-end, multi-million-dollar selling teams that are selling into Fortune 5,000. So certainly this wasn't something they could put in their price list and immediately take to market successfully. Secondly, if you looked at software in general and how it's sold and how it's successfully sold, it's really building around momentum. And industry changes that have occurred in video conferencing is a great example. It's been certainly one that's been targeted for freemium. We're using Zoom, which is the next WebEx team, and I think we're using the freemium version. So video conferencing has certainly followed in that route, and WebEx has suffered from that. It's certainly in the old school of enterprise selling, and certainly no free version, etc. So that's another thing that's gone against their favor. On the consumer side, I would say, again, the consumer DNA to either directly buy online or to go through retail outlets is not something Cisco is familiar with at all. I think the channel play around Linksys, Pure Digital, which I'll give them kudos to shut it down as fast as they did, given it was meaningfully loss-making as well. Those would be just not in their DNA, not something they could pull off. I would say today's acquisitions, it's unclear if wearable computing and computing in the home to monitor one's thermostat is a long-term value proposition, and what other services could be built into that. That's questionable, and that's the future. What's not is both Facebook and Google's ability to target the consumer and to be able to successfully sell to the consumer. Certainly, they've shown that with their core business.
Okay, so that's very interesting. The other aspect that also occurs to me is cultural fit, right? And let's take a different example here. If you look at Amazon and Zappos, the parallels again between Amazon, Zappos, and Facebook, WhatsApp are actually very interesting in many ways. Mm-hmm. Very early, WhatsApp founders said, we will never have advertising. We just want to enable simple communication. They're not even doing the the sticker sales and all that happen in the messaging apps coming out of Asia. So their approach was always different, right? So their approach was, we have to simplify communications as much as possible. In fact, I even love their voice messaging functionality. I don't know if you've used it. It's essentially like a walkie-talkie, right? I just love it. It's great when you just want to send a quick message and listen to somebody else's quick message. Facebook's view obviously is in a way completely the opposite, right? They're in the media business almost. At one point, maybe kind of a year and a half ago, I sort of reflected on my use of Facebook, and I realized I actually wasn't using it to connect with people as much as I was consuming content. I would go hit like on some, media company's webpage and get their updates, whether it's Slate.com or Huffington Post or whoever, right? And their whole idea is we'll monetize by selling advertising, right? So from that very high level perspective, it seems like they've got totally diametrically opposite views of the world. Now, fundamentally, I know they both say we're about connecting the world, but you've got this issue. If I then take, Amazon and Zappos, they pretty much had the same view, the same sort of situation where Tony Hsieh, I think when he was first approached by Amazon, his view was, no, I'm never going to do this. I'm not going to do it because Amazon is all about automation, reducing costs, so on and so forth. That is really their core focus. Whereas Zappos is about customer service, cost and price and all that can come later. It's a consequence really, right? So I think the initial response that he had, and I read, quite a detailed interview and quite a frank interview that he gave to Inc. magazine. This is what he said. But then he said, over time I realized when I spoke to Jeff Bezos and we sort of shared our views together, that our ultimate aim was to help serve the customer. Ultimately, it's all about customer need. How we get there, the route we take to get there, can differ. Amazon takes the low price and sort of expand the horizon sort of view, whereas Zappos takes the custom one-on-one. The company's got to do customer service, and so on. That view. Eventually, they came to sort of kind of a joint conclusion. How do you think it's going to play out in the Facebook WhatsApp case? Can they actually? Will Facebook sort of subtly or more forcefully implant their thesis on WhatsApp, or is it going to be coexist together? Instagram obviously started doing advertising. A lot of kids who used to follow Instagram are now on Snapchat. Fred Wilson again has talked about this. What do you think?
Yeah, great point. I would say the Facebook WhatsApp culture, or rather founder philosophies and founder DNAs, fundamentally are very similar. As you said, with WhatsApp, no in-app purchases, no advertising. The only monetization is, I think, US only, iOS only users, and that too after a year free.
Well, not completely. I've paid for it as well. So.
Got it. So, but they've been reluctant to monetize very clearly.
Right.
And, the idea being that, of course, user experience comes first, and ads are antithetical to a good user experience, and so they didn't want that, and they stayed with that, and they were able to be profitable and build a small, have a very little burn, and go and do that really successfully. I believe the Facebook founder DNA and philosophy is similar. Certainly was similar. Facebook, when they launched advertising, etc., on their site, they try to do it the right way. If you looked at how it's very specific with the 3 boxes on the right, and it hasn't changed from that. Again, trying to disrupt the user experience as little as possible. So if anyone's going to instill advertising into the WhatsApp messaging platform, I'd rather it be done by Facebook because it will be done so carefully such that to not disrupt the user experience. And I think may have a great success out of it. I'm not sure why the WhatsApp team didn't try that in some way, but I'm pretty sure they'll try it within Facebook, and I'm sure they'll do it successfully as
well. Okay. So, sitting here in Singapore, I've been covering, as I said, India and Southeast Asia, in fact, also a little bit of Australia, New Zealand. So the perspective I have is sort of very broad. And the contrast which exists between the US or broadly Western markets to this region is quite clear, right? And I've been thinking to myself, even before these 3 big deals, certainly before Facebook, WhatsApp, whether the same sorts of things can happen here, and what do entrepreneurs need to look forward to, and what future can they create for themselves. In many ways, just looking at a very macro and just crunching the numbers kind of an approach, not bottom up, but purely top down. To me, it's very clear that the center of mass is shifting here, right? So mainly because of increasing consumers coming online here, mostly via mobile, right? In fact, first via mobile. They don't even see a PC. Certainly not tablets, it's just simply mobile. And the second thing being increasing income. Now, if you combine those 2 factors, clearly the innovation to support those kinds of customers is going to be different, number one, from the innovation that's needed in the US or elsewhere. But not only is it going to be different, I think the very fact that you've got such a huge critical mass of people coming online here who are not quite like China or like Japan, who tend to be a bit more insular, these guys here are a bit more sort of open to other things because historically they've been pushed upon them. Google has been pushed upon them, and Facebook and so on. They are much better connected and much more, I would say, in a way, the level of influence will start shifting eastwards to this part of the world. Again, I think there are a few people who've talked about the trend, for example, from moving from Facebook to share photos, to Instagram to share photos, to now Snapchat to share photos, and sort of the bleeding edge of the consumer, which often is teens, but not necessarily. They keep moving to the next one, and you can sort of follow that trend to sort of logically figure out sort of what's coming next. I think the same thing can be applicable here, right? So historically, we simply had people consuming stuff, may not even be in their own language. Increasingly now, it's about not just consuming, but also sharing and so on and so forth. But a lot of idiosyncrasies for the local markets. For example, the online dating market is different from, say, Vietnam to Thailand. Very, very different. The cultural expectations are very, very different. So I think a lot of that is going to drive, I think, innovation from here. And my hope and my guess would be, my assessment is that we really will see some big platforms coming out of even this region, which I include India in that region.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'd actually start with India there, Murli. So the reason being, if you look at the statistics, let's take India separately. Over 850 million feature phones, 80+% feature phone penetration, small but growing number of smartphones. I don't want to quote it because it's growing at such a phenomenal rate. Facebook just announced India is their number 2 country at 100 million users out of India, accessing it through a variety of means, but again, primarily mobile, including feature phone mobile. It's clear that the user base is out there. Sorry, one more statistic. WhatsApp's last announced India number was 45 million out of their 400+ million total. Today's India number will be meaningfully larger. So it's clear that the mobile base is there. The internet mobile base is there as well. And so next generation apps that are around mobile messaging, around gaming, around social networking even, can all come out of India and Southeast Asia. If you look at the anonymity-based apps that are around today, Whisper, Secret, etc., they could all come out of India. The infrastructure, the startup infrastructure might not be there as meaningfully yet to encourage that, but certainly the developers and the user base and the ideas are there. Philippines is country number 3 for Facebook. I think Thailand's country number 7. So really meaningful numbers coming out of Southeast Asian sort of bellwethers, and they're not even on fixed broadband or mobile broadband or smartphones in a meaningful way yet. For sure there. On wearable computing, I'm not sure. Certainly the cutting edge intellectual property and developers aren't there for that necessarily.
True. I just like to add, one last point, which is I think that this point about it being different across various countries here, that obviously fragments the market a little bit or segments the market a little bit. Sometimes what is ignored is how even within a larger country in this region, you can have segmentation or fragmentation. So in many ways, I would say places like Delhi and Bombay and Bangalore are more similar to Bangkok and Jakarta and maybe even Singapore than a place like Jakarta is to a smaller town within Indonesia, right? So those I think can form a common trend, right? Or a common thread. And back to your point about smartphone penetration, if you've got 850 million or a billion or whatever number of phone users in India, and you have, let's say, a single-digit % of smartphones, as you said, it's growing very quickly. Whether single digits or low double digits, I don't really care. But that, on an absolute basis, is a massive number. And guess what? Most of them are going to be concentrated in the major metros, in the major cities. Pretty much the same pattern applies to the other countries in the region. And that's why I think those will form sort of a common trend. In many ways, the aspirations are the same, the growth levels are the same. Culturally also, there's a lot of similarities between many of these countries. More so than the similarity, say, between, say, Japanese and Chinese consumers, or Japanese and consumers here, right? So I think those are going to be the final drivers for stuff coming out of here. And finally, I would say it's not only a case of looking to the valley to see what innovations have come there and can those come out of here. It's going to be different sorts of innovation coming out of here compared to what is over there, and they may actually be in parallel universes. They may never actually meet, but it'll be stuff from here for here.
Agreed.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap. I guess we'll get the next video up in the next few days.
Yeah, just one more thing, Murli, before we log off. I wanted to do a quick preview on one of our next blogs. A digital commerce company in India, Home Shop 18, just filed for a public offering in the US on the NYSE. Fascinating company, the first physical commerce, physical and digital commerce company to file, and certainly not the largest, but it is the first. It's primarily a TV commerce company, but it's also got an internet component. And we've got a blog post on it, and then we're going to do a video blog analyzing it as well. So see you guys then.